Hey everyone, Kavemi here with another Reddit story. Today's is about a woman who had a really bad feeling about her sister and her boyfriend, and she was right just before the sister's wedding. It's a story that will keep you interested. Get ready, watch the Minecraft in the background, and let's start. I saw my selfish younger sister kissing my boyfriend a week before her wedding. I told her fiancé, who seemed to ignore me, but he shocked everyone at the wedding. As a 28-year-old woman, I found myself in a tough spot with my 26-year-old sister and my 29-year-old boyfriend. My sister's wedding was coming up fast, and I started to notice that she was acting strangely around my boyfriend. At first, it wasn't anything clear, just small things that made me feel uneasy. It began with comments that seemed okay, where my sister would often say things like, "Wow, you're so funny," to my boyfriend's jokes, even if they weren't very good. She laughed too hard at everything he said. I tried to forget about it, thinking maybe she was just being extra friendly because of the wedding excitement. But as time went on, I noticed more worrying signs. She started finding excuses to touch him lightly, like putting a hand on his arm when talking, or gently bumping into him when she walked by. These touches were small but clear. I also saw her eyes stay on him a bit too long, when he wasn't looking, which made my stomach feel sick. One night, after we came back from a family dinner, where my sister had been very flirty, I chose to talk to my boyfriend about it. I asked him, "Did you see how Clara was acting tonight?" He looked confused and said, "What are you talking about?" I then explained what I had seen: the constant laughing, the touching that wasn't needed, and the long looks. He listened, but then he just shrugged and said, "I think you're worrying too much. She's probably just excited about the wedding. It's not a big deal." Even though he tried to calm me down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. It didn't feel harmless to me at all. Despite my boyfriend saying everything was fine, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, so I decided to watch closely, hoping I was just overreacting and wrong. But the next few weeks were tense. Every time we were near my sister, I was always watching her, noticing every little thing she did. It became clear that she was always trying to be near my boyfriend. She would sit next to him whenever she could, and she seemed to find many excuses to ask for his help with wedding things, even when I was right there. One day we were all at my parents' house for a barbecue. At one point, I went inside to use the bathroom, and when I came back, I saw something that made me feel terrible. My sister and my boyfriend were talking quietly, in a corner of the yard, standing very close. My sister was giggling at something he said, a sound that made my stomach churn with worry. The moment they saw me, they quickly moved apart, and my sister walked away as if nothing happened. I felt a wave of nausea and anger, but I decided not to fight with them right then, not wanting to make a scene at a family event. Instead, I waited until we got home that night. When we were alone, I tried to bring up the subject calmly. I asked my boyfriend what he and my sister had been talking about earlier. He seemed surprised by my question and said they were just talking about wedding details like the music. His answer didn't satisfy me. I couldn't help but ask why they needed to stand so close for a simple talk. He sighed, clearly annoyed, and tried to brush off my worries. He told me again that nothing was happening, saying my sister was just being friendly. But by this point I couldn't hold back my feelings. I told him I was upset, pointing out that my sister was basically throwing herself at him, and he wasn't doing anything to stop it. My words seemed to hurt him, and he looked at me sadly, asking what he was supposed to do. He reminded me that she was my sister, and he was just trying to be nice. Telling her to back off seemed impossible for him. I told him he could at least set some rules, making it clear he wasn't interested in anything more than a friendly relationship. But he insisted he didn't like her at all, saying there was nothing to fix because I was seeing problems that didn't exist. Our talk went around and around, with neither of us seeing the other's point, leaving us both upset and unsure what to do next. After arguing for a while with no answer, it was clear that our talk was useless. My boyfriend kept saying I was imagining things, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get him to see what was so clearly happening. In the end, we both went to bed feeling mad and upset, with the problem still there. The next day, I realised I needed to talk to my sister directly. It was clear that avoiding the issue was just making it worse, so I decided to call her and ask if we could meet for coffee. She easily said yes, her voice happy, and seeming unaware of how worried I was. We agreed to meet at a small coffee shop near her house. When we met, I was nervous, my hands shaking a little as I stirred my coffee. My sister, on the other hand, was happy, talking a lot about her wedding plans. She seemed completely unaware of how uncomfortable I was, which made things harder for me. After a few minutes of listening to her talk, I knew I couldn't keep quiet anymore. I stopped her while she was talking, my voice showing how serious I was. I told her we needed to discuss something important. My sister, surprised by the sudden change in my voice, looked at me and asked what was wrong. Taking a deep breath to steady myself, I began to explain. I told her I'd noticed how she'd been acting around Leo, my boyfriend, and that it was making me uncomfortable. I mentioned the flirting, the little touches, and the long looks, things that had been bothering me for a while. I strongly said that her actions needed to stop. As I spoke, I watched her face change through different feelings. Surprise first, then confusion, and finally anger. She demanded to know what I was talking about, strongly denying that she had been flirting with Leo at all. I refused to back down, saying that she had been doing exactly that, whether she knew it or not. I explained that her actions were not just wrong, but they were also causing me a lot of pain. She laughed, but it wasn't a real laugh. She told me I was being silly, saying Leo was almost family and she was just being friendly. However, her words did little to ease the tension, and I could tell that this conversation had hit a nerve. As I sat there, it became clear that this wouldn't be easy to fix, and the distance between us would probably only get bigger. I couldn't hold back anymore and expressed my frustration, pointing out that it was more than just friendliness. I explained that she was always finding reasons to be near my boyfriend, to touch him, and to laugh at all his jokes, even the ones that weren't funny to me. It was clear what she was doing, and it was making me very uneasy. As I spoke, I could see her face turn red with anger and disbelief. She was clearly shocked by what I was saying, especially so close to her wedding. She answered sharply, questioning how sure of myself I was, and suggesting that I must be deeply insecure to accuse her of such behaviour. Her words stung, but I knew I had to stick to my guns. I tried to explain that I wasn't worried about being insecure, but about respect. I told her she was doing something wrong and that her behaviour needed to stop now. Suddenly, she stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor, showing the end of our talk. She said she wouldn't sit there and listen to what she thought were crazy and silly accusations. She made it clear that if I couldn't trust my own sister, then that was my problem, not hers. With that, she stormed out of the coffee shop, leaving me alone with many feelings. I felt awful and started to doubt myself. Did I react too strongly? Was I really just being paranoid? When I got home, my boyfriend immediately noticed something was wrong. He asked me what happened, and I told him about the talk I just had with my sister. As I shared the details, I could see worry growing on his face. When I finished, he let out a heavy sigh and told me he thought I had made a big mistake. He was worried that Clara would be very hurt, especially with her wedding so close. Feeling defensive, I asked him if he was taking her side. He quickly told me he wasn't choosing sides, but he said he doubted Clara had been flirting with him. Even if she had been, which he thought was unlikely, he believed that talking to her so directly was not the best way to deal with it. His words left me feeling even more confused, unsure if I had done the right thing. As I felt tears coming, I had to ask, so what was I supposed to do? Just ignore it? The frustration and hurt were clear in my voice. Seeing how upset I was, my boyfriend walked over and gently put his arms around me. He suggested that maybe I could have handled things differently, that maybe I could have talked to him more first or approached Clara in a way that was less aggressive. He worried that now, because of how things happened, Clara was probably mad at both of us, and that this could cast a shadow over her upcoming wedding, making everything feel very awkward. Feeling overwhelmed, I pulled away from him and asked him, "So this is all my fault?" I needed to know if he truly thought I was to blame for the situation. He sighed deeply, clearly struggling to find the right words, and explained that he didn't mean to blame only me. However, he did think that I might have overreacted, letting my feelings control me. We kept arguing for a while, but it became clear we would not agree. There was a big difference in how we saw things, and neither of us seemed ready to fully understand the other. Finally, he decided to go to bed, leaving me alone with my confused thoughts and doubts. The days after were full of tension. My sister had completely stopped talking to me, making a painful distance between us. My parents, after seeing Clara's sadness, called me wanting to know why she was so upset. I tried to explain the situation to them, but I could tell from their responses that they also thought I had overreacted. As the wedding day got closer, I felt more and more unsure of what to do. I was supposed to be a bridesmaid, an important job that now felt like a heavy weight. I wasn't even sure if Clara still wanted me to be part of her big day. My boyfriend, however, was still invited, and he suggested we both go to show that there were no bad feelings. But the thought of standing there watching my sister walk down the aisle while knowing how angry and hurt she was made me feel physically ill. The whole situation had become a giant mess, and I didn't know how to fix it without causing more pain. I tried calling Clara several times, but she didn't pick up. She never answered when I left messages saying sorry and that we should have talked. I even visited her apartment, but she closed the door. My worry grew as the wedding day came near. Even though my partner kept pushing me to forget it, saying everything would pass, I was not convinced. In a bad dream, I showed up for the wedding, and everyone turned to stare at me, pointing and whispering. I woke up shaking. Update. After my fight with Clara, things got worse when she told our mother about what I said. Mum got very angry. She called me, yelling about how I could be so selfish right before Clara's wedding, and how worried she was. "How could you say such a thing about your own sister?" she shouted. She wouldn't listen as I tried to explain my side. She told me to fix this problem right away and say sorry to Clara. The stress on our family was too much. Clara still won't talk to me, and now my parents are upset too. Leo, my partner, kept telling me I was seeing things that weren't there, which just made me feel more sad and angry. I went to my parents' house to try to sort things out a week before the wedding. As I reached the front door, I heard low voices coming from the side of the house. Curious, I walked to the garden and stopped, completely shocked by what I saw there. Clara and Leo were partly hidden behind a big plant, locked in a strong embrace. They were kissing hard. Clara's legs were wrapped around Leo's middle. His hand was under her shirt. They were so focused on each other that they didn't even see me standing there. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. All the air left my body, and for a moment I couldn't move or talk. As the truth of what I was seeing started to sink in, a huge wave of anger and feeling betrayed rushed over me. My emotions took over, and I found myself screaming, "Gotsibe! What is this?" My voice shook, thick with how strongly I felt. Their reaction was fast. My sister and my boyfriend jumped back, looking totally guilty. Clara's face lost all colour, turning white when she realised she was caught, while Leo fumbled for the right words, stuttering, "It's not what it looks like." But it was exactly what it looked like, proving every fear and doubt I'd had. Tears began to run down my face as I cried out, "How could you? My own sister and my boyfriend!" The pain in my voice was clear. Clara also started to cry, her voice shaking with regret as she tried to apologise. "I'm so sorry," she cried, struggling to explain. "We didn't mean for this to happen." But I couldn't stand to hear any of their excuses. The betrayal was too deep, too painful. Without another word, I turned and ran, rushing back to my car. Their desperate calls for me to come back didn't stop me as I drove away, my mind spinning with disbelief and hurt. As I sped away, my phone started ringing constantly. First Leo, then Clara, and finally my mum. I couldn't answer any of them. The pain was too fresh, too strong. When I finally arrived home, I felt numb. I immediately packed a bag with clothes and the things I would need for a few days. I couldn't stay here after what had just happened. I sent Leo one last text message, simply saying, "We're done. Don't try to call me again." Then I turned off my phone, cutting off any more contact, and left. I'm writing this from a hotel room in a nearby city, unsure of what to do next. With the wedding just a few days away, I know there is no way I can go. My relationship is broken, and the closeness I once had with my sister may be forever damaged by this betrayal. It feels like my whole world has been turned upside down. Everyone made me feel like I was crazy for thinking something was wrong. But in the end, I was right all along. The pain of knowing that is almost too much to handle. And I find myself wondering how I will ever trust anyone again after this. So, Reddit, any advice on how to go on from here would be appreciated. Update. After the terrible shock of finding my sister Clara with my now ex-boyfriend Leo, I spent several days lost in thought, trying to understand what happened. My phone was always buzzing with messages and missed calls from both of them, as well as from my parents, but I just couldn't answer. I was too overwhelmed, too hurt. Eventually, though, I realised that Brendan, Clara's fiancé, was one person who really needed to know the truth. With a heavy heart, I made the hard choice to call him. When Brendan answered, I could hear the confusion in his voice. He asked what was happening, saying that Clara had been very upset and that I had disappeared and wasn't talking to anyone. Taking a deep breath, I started to tell him everything. I told him about the first doubts I had, how everyone, including Leo and Clara, had ignored my worries, and then I described in detail the scene I'd seen in my parents' yard. Brendan listened quietly, not stopping me, only making a small sound sometimes to let me know he was still there, taking in everything I was saying. When I finally finished, there was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. Then, in a calm, controlled voice, Brendan simply thanked me for telling him, adding that he needed time to think about this information. With that, he hung up. Afterward, I sat there staring at my phone, wondering what Brendan would do now that he knew the truth. As the wedding day got closer, I didn't hear anything more from him or from the rest of my family. Clara had stopped trying to reach me, and I started to think that she had somehow managed to talk Brendan into forgiving her. The thought that she might actually get away with what she did, that she could have her perfect wedding while my life was ruined, made me feel sick. I knew there was no way I could go to the wedding. The idea of watching Clara walk down the aisle, knowing what she had done, was too much. Instead, I decided to spend that day alone, focusing on how to rebuild my life after such deep cheating. On the evening of the wedding, I got a surprising call from my cousin Eliza. There was a clear feeling of excitement and urgency in her quiet voice as she said, "Oh my God, you won't believe what just happened." Confused and curious, I asked her what she meant. Right away, Eliza jumped into her story, telling me about the events that had taken place. She explained that everything had seemed normal at first. Clara had looked beautiful in her wedding dress, and Brendan had been standing at the altar, ready for the ceremony to start. But when it was time for the wedding promises, Brendan suddenly stepped forward and announced that he had something to say. My heart started to race as I listened to Eliza describe the scene. Brendan, in front of everyone, declared that he could not go through with the wedding. He told the guests that he could not marry someone who had cheated on her own sister and destroyed her life by getting involved with her boyfriend. Eliza went on, telling how Clara had turned completely pale at Brendan's words. Then, to everyone's shock, Brendan turned to my parents and apologised, telling them that they needed to know the real reason why I'd kept away from the family. Eliza continued to say that Clara had started crying. My parents were left shocked and confused, and the guests started whispering to each other, trying to understand what was happening. Brendan then walked out of the church, leaving Clara sobbing alone at the altar. "It was like something from a movie," Eliza told me, her voice still showing her disbelief. "Everyone is in shock. Your parents are trying to get the full story from Clara, but she's a mess." As I sat there taking in everything Eliza had just told me, I felt a mix of feelings. On one hand, I felt proved right, knowing that the truth had finally come out. But on the other hand, I felt a deep sadness for the pain and trouble this had caused my family. Eliza, sensing my quietness, gently asked, "Are you okay?" "I'm not sure," I said honestly. I never wanted it to end this way. After talking a little more with Eliza, I hung up and sat quietly, trying to figure things out. The truth was out. My relationship with Clara was broken. My time with Leo ended, and now my whole family was in trouble. I realised that even though the truth was clear now, it didn't fix everything right away. Healing and trusting again would take a long time, but I felt a little bit of peace for the first time since this whole nightmare began. At least now, I could start to move forward, free from the weight of the secret holding me back. About what's next, I don't know, but I know I will have to face my family eventually. Right now, I am just living one day at a time. If nothing else, this event has taught me how important it is to follow my gut feeling and stand up for myself, even when people doubt me. To everyone who helped me through this, thank you. Your encouraging words mean more than you can imagine. And to others in the same position, remember to trust your gut feeling and don't let anyone trick you into doubting what you know is true. Thank you for watching. If you haven't yet, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. That's the end of today's story. Thanks for being with me as we went through all that sad family drama and surprising wedding mess. Tell me in the comments what you thought, and stay tuned for more Reddit story videos with the usual Minecraft scenes in the back. I'll see you next time.